Echelon, about a week ago, put out a video regarding something in regards to like fact checkers. Uh, Particularly apparently in on like Facebook and Meta in general. So I'm kind of curious what this means because if we're gonna be honest, fact checking, yeah, it's like fact checking has been kind of in the hands of the everyday person now instead of the companies for a long time. That's why X has got community notes instead of actual fact checking. So I'm kind of curious about this. If it goes beyond just simply, oh, they got rid of it. If there's like deeper reason or what what the circumstances behind it might be. So let's take a look. Hang on. So let's take a look at this and see if there's more going on here than just simply them getting rid of this for reasons.
All right. Most people watching this are probably quite familiar with the term fact checkers, but just in case you're not, it's a term that implies arbitration of the truth, oftentimes with regards to politics, at least in the United States, and it's a concept that is extremely rife with controversy. On one side, you have a common belief that misinformation is an existential threat to democracy and that those who spread it, or otherwise say things that are incorrect as per the agreed upon narrative at the time, should be completely removed from social media and public discourse. On the other, you have advocates of free speech who believe that suppression of that right is a far worse offense than any misinformation could ever possibly be, while rigidly asserting that whether or not something is true or goes against public perception or even offends the sensibilities of their fellow citizens is entirely irrelevant because the right of the speaker to say it transcends any potential right for the government, businesses, or social media platforms to stop them. For the past few years, it almost felt like...
Hang on. I want you to hear those two things again. Because there was something very specific there that I did not hear said that I want to make a point of. Let's listen to that again.
And it's a concept that is extremely rife with controversy. On one side, you have a common belief that misinformation is an existential threat to democracy and that those who spread it, or otherwise say things that are incorrect as per the agreed upon narrative at the time, should be completely removed from social media and public discourse. On the other, you have advocates of free speech who believe that suppression of that right is a far worse offense than any misinformation could ever possibly be, while rigidly asserting that whether or not something is true or goes against public perception or even offends the sensibilities of their fellow citizens is entirely irrelevant because the right of the speaker to say it transcends any potential right for the government, businesses, or social media platforms to stop them. For the past...
Notice something very specific missing from both of those arguments. There's something incredibly specific and important missing from both of those arguments. The first one says you shouldn't deviate from the established narrative, and if you do, you should be canceled and basically booted off the platform or the internet. The other side says you should be able to say what you want because free speech, and you can't infringe upon someone's right to say whatever they want. No, not truth, Lord Raven. Facts. Truth is subjective. Truth, okay. To quote Dr. Jones, you are in the pursuit of facts, not truth. If you're looking for truth, the philosophy studies is down the hall. No mention of those two differentiating discourses did we hear anything about fact. Fact is something that is backed up by evidence and science. You had the established narrative, and then you had I can say what I want. Neither of which is fact. Neither of it. Zeb, I would disagree that the use of the word narrative is not what we understand the facts to be at the moment. I would argue that using narrative in this context does not include actual facts. The narrative can basically pose elements in there that don't add up to that you can pose elements that may have some kind of factual basis, but when put together do not actually constitute a fact. It's you get kernels of facts in the narrative, but they don't add up to actual fact. So no, it's not the same thing. And in both of those, fact was not an equation. That's a key thing to take note of here.
Last few years, it almost felt like background noise, at least in my view. It was certainly happening, fact checking all over the place, but there wasn't really anything we could do to change it. Private social media companies are going to do whatever it is they want to do. And maybe long term impacts like governmental regulation over a multi year period resulting from certain elected officials might have some sort of impact. But boots on the ground, normal, everyday people had very little effect on the overall concept of fact checkers. Without getting too far into the weeds, fact checking was particularly prevalent during the rise of COVID-19 and is also extremely common when it comes to political discourse. A couple of high profile examples would be when fact checkers adamantly
Elwind, free speech has gone in the court system. Free speech has gone beyond freedom of government interference and suppression. Big dog, it's upper echelon. So the courts have actually taken stances regarding free speech that do go beyond preventing government interference and suppression. Because we've seen court cases, I forget who specifically brought the case, but it was like on social media. There were court cases brought forth for freedom of speech because they got like booted off the platform or something to that effect. And the courts did side with the plaintiff in that case, saying that, yeah, this is protected speech. You cannot forcibly try and silence him. I'm pretty sure it was a social media platform. But it does go beyond only affecting government interference and suppression. Now, there is, there are limits to it, of course. The traditional you can't yell fire at a crowded theater and claim it to be free speech. So there are limits to it, but it has expanded since the inception of the First Amendment.
Labeled or shut down, rather, discussion of the Wuhan lab leak theory for COVID-19, the origins of it, or the Hunter Biden laptop story, which took hold at the climax of the 2020 presidential race. You might actually see down below this video right now some kind of stupid little blue banner with a link to like Wikipedia or something because I said COVID and Hunter Biden laptop. And
let's see. Let's verify that. Nope. There is not. There is, and he put this out 7 days ago, so there is no little, YouTube blue banner about that.
YouTube is making sure you know the truth with some boilerplate, here are the facts kind of statement about whatever issue it perceives me to be talking about. I had that happen recently with a story about leaked files on a hacking forum because I mentioned Area 51 with this dumbass definition of what Area 51 really is down below, even though it had basically nothing to do with the actual video, and there was nothing even remotely untrue that I said in its entirety. But regardless, fact checkers over the past 8 or so years, it feels like, became a pretty ubiquitous concept online. That is, they were until now. It's a bit of an unexpected news break in my view, but recently Facebook, now called Meta, is apparently distancing themselves from the idea of fact checkers immediately before the incoming Trump administration takes power, which has led to a very interesting divide in public opinion about whether or not that's a good thing. As I said earlier, one side says yes, the other says no, but I want to take a deeper look at the announcement, what it means, and who it impacts.
Well, here's the divide is kind of immaterial because even when Facebook and Meta writ large had fact checkers, there were plenty of people that were calling the fact checking out, saying that the facts were incorrect and were actually able to cite their sources that the facts performed by the fact checkers are wrong. So 100% what this article said at the very beginning.
Cheer 100, let's call it for what it is. Zuckerberg doesn't want to get in trouble.
Yeah, you're right about that. It's been a while. It's been a long time since I've been on Facebook, Zed. I know that during like 2014, 2016 era, there was a lot of discussion in regards to what was that? There was one particular thing. Fuck, it's in the back of my head. I can't remember it. Damn. It's been years since I thought about this. I can't remember exactly what it was, but there's there were uh several times where there was great disagreement about the fact checker statements on Facebook, and some people were even actually citing sources to back up their statements. Now, obviously, I didn't delve into it and like go in and investigate on this because I didn't care. I don't use Facebook. But that's where I'm talking about with like there's been questions about the validity of the fact checkers in and of themselves. Because there was a question about whether or not, there was that whole question about Facebook backing one candidate or the other. And my guess is, like this article was saying, Zuckerberg is probably removing the fact checkers because of who is about to come in office. And you know who was highly fucking critical about Facebook, saying that Facebook was actually playing for the other team, essentially. And now that he's succeeded with the election, they're probably going, oh shit, he may come after this because he's made no secret that he will be happy to go after social media companies. And so he's probably trying to placate, given that, what's happened with TikTok. Yeah, I'm not gonna argue. I'm not going to, I'm not gonna argue that machine is because, yeah, they, like, these, social media groups, of course they did. But yeah, especially particularly with the fact that TikTok, as of Sunday, is gone from the US if everything goes through. And so Zuckerberg and all the other, Zuckerberg and I don't know, Google, whoever, actually not Google, but actually beyond Zuckerberg and Elon, who else has a fucking social media platform these days? It's Twitter, Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat. There really isn't much more than that, and Zuckerberg has got the lion's share of that. So he's kind of unofficially been put on notice, and he's trying to placate. And quasi ribbons. Reddit, I would say quasi. Reddit's just like a sewer pit, so I don't think anybody ever takes it seriously. So yeah, he's probably terrified. He's probably terrified that they're gonna come after him once he gets into power. Because they already went after TikTok and succeeded. So he's 100% doing a placation.
Because in my view, it's a very clear turning of the tide, if you will. And I
yes,
wouldn't be surprised if we look back
absolutely
on this
correct there.
5 or 10 years from now as an inflection point in the world of online discourse.
Tier 100.
My
I
premise
only
is very
look at
simple.
Reddit for hardware gore.
Fact-checking in its basic rudimentary form is absolutely good and extremely necessary. However, fact-checking as we see it on social media here and now today is a complete joke governed and manipulated by people who are deliberately bastardizing the concept as a result of their own intrinsic bias. And if we can't
Oh, the yacht ads, okay. Yeah, and upper echelon is correct because there's a difference between actual fact checkers and social media fact checkers. Those are two very different things. Because, thank you, Dragon. Because actual fact checkers for non-social media publications, that is their job and they take it seriously. at least as seriously as we can expect. There's a whole other argument that can be made in terms of media and their fact checking, which I am not even going to get into because that is a whole different, hornet's nest to dive into. But social media, they don't fucking care. They, realistically speaking, they don't care if their fact checkers are right. It's more of that they want the appearance that they're doing quote unquote due diligence. And that's the key thing. I don't know if he's going to be bringing this up, but with social media and their fact checkers, they want the appearance of legitimacy. But there's a very good chance that legitimacy does not actually exist.
Strip the system down to a much more neutral baseline, it really just shouldn't exist. Here's the announcement from Zuckerberg. He did a 5-minute video talking about what type of changes
I'll
would
have
be
to
made.
look, Gore.
And it's also widely reported in the news cycle, but the gist of it is that they're dialing back their content moderation algorithms, reintroducing more civic content to the algorithm. That's probably going to suck. I can already feel it. Eliminating their use of...
Wait. Hang on.
It is that they're dialing back their content moderation algorithms, reintroducing more civic content to the algorithm.
Does anybody know what civic content means? I have no idea what civic content into the algorithm even means. Really? Oh, fuck. Okay. So Facebook is going to turn into even more of a fucking cesspool. It was already bad, and now it's going to get 100 times worse. Because they're actually going to be pushing politics into it. Glad I'm not on Facebook.
That's probably going to suck. I can already feel it. Eliminating their use of fact checkers in favor of a community-sourced alternative, similar to what Twitter is doing under Elon Musk.
Yeah, okay.
And a few more things that I honestly don't really care about because I don't use Facebook. The important thing here, obviously, is the removal of fact checkers, which hopefully signals a wider shift in the social media space. But let me explain precisely why I think that way, because again, the basic premise of fact checking is completely necessary in a modern digital world. I'll start with this.
Okay.
Facebook uses a well-documented approach to fact-checking, which relies on an organization called IFCN, which is the International Fact-Checking Network. That system, however, was only implemented in 2020. Prior to that, Facebook used more direct partners, such as Snopes.com, for a multi-year period, ending in 2019. Interestingly, Snopes.com is actually one of the signatories for the IFCN, which means that Facebook is actually still working with them to a degree. It's just not a direct link between the two companies. Considering its direct partnership from 2016 to 2019 and its current approved status with the International Fact-Checking Network, Snopes is the example I chose to focus on for today while discussing the concept of fact-checking. Facebook is obviously doing this because it perceives fact-checking to be detrimental to its business. By itself, that means nothing. But one of the reasons directly cited by Mark Zuckerberg is political bias and loss of trust. Well, in order for Snopes to be approved by the IFCN, it has to go through an evaluation process, which has happened 4 separate times in the past 8 or so years. Twice during the time it was directly partnered with Facebook. Bear with me here. One of the criteria in that process reads, quote, "Non-partisanship policy evidence required. Please share evidence of your policy preventing staff from direct involvement in political parties and advocacy organizations." End quote. And this is very obviously on its face a good rule to have, because when fact-checking on social media is so inextricably linked to politics every single day, you really can't have people arbitrating the truth that are donating to or directly affiliated with one side of the political spectrum. It's called bias, and even if that writer or the employer thinks that they're capable of being unbiased, they're not. Here's the problem. If you look at the actual assessment that was done here in 2018, which was during their partnership with Facebook, you can see the responses that were given by the person applying, or rather organization applying, and the response that Snopes gave reads, quote, "See the statements at the head of the staff page and the revenue page," end quote. That's it. Well, deciding to go down the rabbit hole, because why not go down the rabbit hole, I went and looked at the staff page, where way down at the bottom, there's a note that says, quote, Members of our editorial staff are precluded from donating to or participating in political campaigns, political party activities, or political advocacy organizations. End quote. That sounds fine,
Okay.
right? But something
Sure.
told me to start checking, so I picked a name and I checked. I picked Jordan Lyles, who is a senior reporter, obviously part of the editorial staff, working at Snopes for the past 8 years in various different positions. And I looked up political campaign contributions, which turned up this right here, showing a bunch of donations by people named
Oh boy.
Jordan Lyles to various committees and politicians. That's no big deal, but small problem. 5 of those donations in 2018 come from someone named Jordan Lyles, who was employed at the time by a company called Bardav. And this is where I went way far down the rabbit hole, because Bardav was apparently a joint company created by Barbara and David Mickelson, founders of Snopes, where each of them owned a 50% share. It's the parent organization of Snopes.com. And connecting the dots now, Jordan Lyles, while working for Snopes at the level of video producer, was donating actively to Act Blue, which is a Democratic super PAC. And that was the first name I chose. From here, it got even worse. It kind of spiraled out of control because...
Holy crap! And before Echelon jumped into this, I was actually going to say, no, it's not Revan. That's what I was going to say. In this day and age, you would be very hard-pressed to find anyone that is truly, like, apolitical or doesn't, ascribe or commentate or something or share sympathy with some kind of organization or group. Is it possible? Sure. Like me, I'm politically speaking, I fucking hate all politics, so I don't deal with politics. But I will, throw support in one direction or another if what they're, if that particular group is making sense. If they're making fair sense. It's what's the best way to put this? Okay, like what we were discussing yesterday, how I said that I am very supportive of the people in the LGBT community, but I'm also very anti shoving it down everybody's throats and saying you must love this or you are canceled. So it's like I can offer some like verbal types of appeal if it makes sense. Now, am I like donating to any of these groups? Fuck no. I'm not donating to any organization, any political group, none of it. The only organization that I would ever even consider making doing donations to would be a reputable group that works with autism. That is probably one of the only organizations that I would ever consider doing something, donating to and supporting. And again, a reputable one. Keyword there. But when you are a reporter and you're working with the news or something like that, you're gonna be very fucking hard pressed to find someone that does not basically have these leanings. Because these people are operating in this space. They are inundated by it day in and day out. And that is going to affect them mentally, in that they are going to start leaning in one direction or another, sympathizing in one direction or another, and saying, yeah, I want to support one direction or another. So I'd say it's going to be incredibly hard to find someone that is 100% apolitical in that space. It certainly could be possible, yes. machinist, you're going to want to be extremely careful right now. Extremely careful. Because someone very close to me in my family is severely autistic. And if I was presented with the option to genetically quote unquote cure them, I would very seriously consider not doing it for one very specific reason. I would not want to change the sweetness and the kindness that is inherent in that person in my family. And by quote unquote curing their autism, I would be terrified that it might take that away. It's not something that I consider lightly. It's just a very strong concern that I would have in terms of if I was suddenly presented with a cure for autism. And I absolutely don't like the idea of doing genetic manipulation pre-birth. That is no.
Cheer 100. It's all well and good to talk of curing autism, but autism is part of a person's personality.
Exactly.
If that gets removed, what else gets removed with it?
That's exactly my point, Leo. The person the person in my family that has autism is severely autistic. And they are one of the sweetest and kindest people I have ever met in my entire life. I would not want to take that away from them. Sir. Because that level of sweetness and kindness is so fucking rare these days. I never want to do anything that will cause that to go away. And I would be terrified that they would lose that wonderful part of them. Oh. Well, Big Dog, Asperger's has now been lumped into the autism spectrum writ large. Once upon a time, Asperger's was sort of adjacent to autism. Now it's kind of it's a part of the
Cheer 100.
spectrum.
I happen to love being neurodivergent, and that is who I am.
Dragon, like I've said before, I've never received the test because they decided they did. When I've seen a therapist, they decide not to test me. I'm like 95% sure I am too, and I'm fine with it. Yeah, it's not a black and white thing, because Ace, like you're saying, with someone with Down syndrome, would you not want to? If there was a quote-unquote cure for Down syndrome, would you not want to cure that? And it's that thing of like, you can see how curing them would be a benefit in their life, because they might be able to function far better in their life without it, but you don't want to take away that core of who they are. Because that core of who they are is what made them such a wonderful person. Well, Falcon, for you it's a little bit different.
Cheer 100. True story. I was diagnosed with Asperger's by a U.S. military psychologist, and was permanently disqualified from joining the armed forces.
Ugh. Nowadays they probably love to have you because they love autistic people in it. Yeah. We have. Oh, Tanashi, you're right. We've gotten off topic. Okay, well, let's get back on topic. We'll get back to this.
Bardav, the company, was subjected to a battle for ownership rights around 2016 because the wife, Barbara Mickelson, sold her shares to a company called Proper Media. I'm not going to get too bogged down right now, but that sale and the situations afterward eventually led to a lawsuit which contained allegations by Barbara Mickelson that her husband, Snopes founder David Mickelson, had been embezzling money, defrauding the company, and spending the money on prostitutes. But wait, there's more, because not only did David Mickelson divorce her, he also married another Snopes employee, a staffer named Alyssa Young,
What
who, according to a Daily Mail investigation, maintained a website advertising her
Hello?
services as an escort while she was working at Snopes. These
The
are the people
fuck?
fact checking you. I'm still not done, because later down the line, in 2021, I shit you not, it comes out that David Mickelson, who still had his ownership stake in Snopes, served as an officer and apparently also worked for them in an editorial capacity, was suspended because he wrote dozens of plagiarized articles between 2015 and 2019 under an alias. And these are the people that are fact checking you.
Okay. So now we're into something wholly different where the fact checker, like, fact checkers themselves can't be trusted. We're kind of going into you just can't fucking trust anybody at this point, which unfortunately is a running theme in life these days, which I don't like. It's that's one thing that's bothered me in recent years is you can't really trust anything. And that's one reason why I stopped actually like routinely consuming the news because you couldn't trust any of it. Even coming from what is supposed to be considered a reputable source. You just don't know anymore because it's always, something different. It's always, oh, but this has come out and it's completely different and this person was lying. It's like, it's enough to drive you fucking insane because you don't know what to trust. As for Shadow, or actually, Zed, here's the thing. I'm not out there claiming to be an expert on something and saying my word is the only one that you should be listening to about anything. I am very explicit in saying I offer opinions. I have been very explicit. I offer opinions. Those opinions are often weighted by my past experiences, which can offer legitimacy to these opinions. But I don't ever say I am an expert. That's the difference between me and the fact checker.
Still not even remotely done, because if that was the domino chain I found after randomly picking a single name off of their staff list, what was I going to find next? Let's find out. The next name I picked, trying to spread out across various different positions, was the Chief Revenue Officer, Justin Wohl.
Oh
One
boy.
person shows up in the political donation archives who simultaneously gave money to Act Blue as well as the Biden campaign, but the employer of this person is Salon. I thought to myself, well, that can't be him. But that little voice came back in my head because this person working at Salon, was also a chief revenue officer. What are the chances of that happening? So I checked the LinkedIn page, and wait a second, Justin Wohl, according to his employment history on his own social media, simultaneously worked as the chief revenue officer at Snopes and Salon in 2020, which is when the donations were made. 2 for 2, and this time at least he chose a company other than Bardav to put on the public record for his political campaign contributions, which, I mean, that's a choice. You're employed by these two different companies, and you chose to put Salon. But anyway, we have 2 employees at Snopes, right, mid and high levels, actively donating to a political campaign during an election cycle, while the website that they are employed by and help to operate is fact-checking at what seems to be like a very disproportionate ratio in my view.
And suggesting that none of their employees do donations or have affiliations with any political group or organization. So it's the company itself is lying in saying all of our people that are fact checking are unbiased. We make it a standing policy that they cannot donate, yet they're donating. Yet they're part, and who knows what political organizations or other activist organizations they need to be a part of that Echelon has not been able to uncover with the digging. That's why I said you're going to be very hard fucking pressed in any of these companies to find anyone that is 100% non-biased, not affiliated, not supportive of anything.
After that, I bounced between names for kind of a while, either finding nothing or being unable to directly prove that the person from the same state with the same name who said unemployed on their donations was actually the same employee working for Snopes, though it's very possible that some of them were. But then I found Anna. I have no idea how to pronounce the last name, but this is Anna, who is a straight up reporter for Snopes, as in the people writing the fact checks. Well, Anna comes up with a lot of small donations to Act Blue in 2020 with an employer listed as Annual Reviews, which it turns out is in fact the company that she worked for in 2020, according to her LinkedIn profile, which made 3 separate instances where Snopes employees, including those on the editorial team, were either actively donating to a Democratic super PAC during their employment or donated directly prior to their employment in that position. Remember, as per the IFCN criteria, Snopes was asked for evidence of their policy preventing direct involvement in political parties. It doesn't specify who or how or when. It just says involvement. And sure, you could technically make an argument that donations directly prior to your involvement at a fact-checking website for one political party don't compromise you or violate the policy, or that donations that were made when you were a video producer or a C-suite executive at the company don't matter because you weren't technically on the editorial team per se. But after going down the rabbit hole on their founder, who was...
Well, okay, yes, that argument can be made, but if your company policy is stating this, and your employees' actions are completely contradictory to that, I'm sorry, that's a fail. You cannot blanketly state our employees do not do this and then have your employees do it. It basically tanks your whole mission statement of being unbiased.
Was simultaneously serving on the editorial staff, plagiarizing articles for 5 years, and allegedly stealing money to buy hookers and marry an escort who was also employed by the company? I don't know. I think I'm fresh out of charitability here as to this company's credibility and their supposed effort to be the unbiased jury of truth. As I went about making this video, specifically the part about the founder, I read a really good quote from a writer at Forbes named Kalev Litaru, I think is how you say it. Here it is. Quote, "While technology pundits decry the black boxes of the algorithms that increasingly power companies like Facebook, they have forgotten that even the human-powered sites offer us little visibility into how they function. At the end of the day, it is clear that before we rush to place fact-checking organizations like Snopes in charge of arbitrating what is truth on Facebook, we need to have a lot more understanding of how they function internally and much greater transparency into their work." End quote. I like that a lot because after Facebook has now disbanded its fact-checking initiatives, a lot of people are crying and crying about how misinformation is going to be a huge problem. Spoiler.
Okay, he's probably about to say the same thing I'm about to say. Misinformation was an issue even when fact-checking was in place. For at least some of the reasons that I said, because absolutely no one that was actually using Facebook believed the fact-checkers. Like, when Facebook put fact-checking in place, how many people do you think actually saw the fact-check of a post and went, oh yeah, I believe that entirely? And how many of them do you think, that's bullshit, Facebook has its own political bias, their fact-checking is going to be politically biased? No one believed it in the first fucking place. So fact-checking in and of itself was a divisive mechanic all on its own because so many people didn't believe in its authenticity. They believed that there was an agenda behind the fact-checking in and of itself. Whether or not there was is immaterial. If people don't believe in the validity of the fact-checking in its onset, then the fact-checking is pointless. And yeah, Zeb, if we're going to go down a rabbit hole, yeah, the original sources that were used for fact-checking, how frequently were those proved to be either incorrect or flat-out lies themselves? So yeah, fact-checking, as Echelon was saying, is a fucking rabbit hole, not because of the people that are doing it or and their political contributions or anything, but the very simple fact is the sources that they're using for the fact-checking. Oh yeah. But wait, hang on. Oh, you're talking about when new information. Okay, so you're talking about Zebs. You referencing the scientific method, where when new evidence comes into play, it changes to reflect the new evidence. That's not what I was talking about. I was talking about sources that when fact checkers would use sources, and those sources ended up being incorrect or flat out lies. And the flip side, what you were saying, which is also correct, which is where you have information that is used in the fact check, new information comes up, and the fact check is adjusted to match with the more correct and up-to-date evidence. Mayor making a report, then coming out later and saying what the reporter is wrong, but they don't believe the mayor about the correction. Yeah, it's basically in an overarching thing of this. We are living in an age that has been in place for at least the last 10 to 20 years. Probably, yeah, more like it's really on supercharged in the last 10, where people don't believe anything. Even if somebody admits, even if there's an admittance of being incorrect, and they say, okay, what we said was wrong. This is with the updated information and evidence that we received. This is what we know to be fact. People will say, I don't believe that because I think you're just lying to cover something up. We're living in an age of suspicion rather than facts and knowledge. That is probably one of the bigger detriments to all of this than anything. Because even if the fact checkers were dead on the money every time, there was no bias of any type, and they were dead on the money, there's been such a push for the whole concept of misinformation that don't believe your own lying eyes, that nothing is viewed as potentially being factual anymore. It's all suspect. And that's why I stopped, that's why I basically cut off really looking at the news. Because it's too easy to drive yourself fucking crazy going, is this actually true? I better go look into this. Well, is this that I'm researching, is this actually true? Or is there, are they wrong about this? Or is there a slant on this? And it's like, you can drive yourself absolutely bonkers just trying to figure out if a simple news story about something is factual or not. And that's kind of why I just backed off away from all of it. And just try and, rely on common sense and basic logic. That's kind of what I work on. Will I still research things? Sure, I will still research things. But I'm not going to drive myself crazy about it. Because honestly, I have a lot better things to do with my time than to me personally try and fact check and research and verify news reports and things like that. Drive me insane. I will get tired and I'll just be like, I just want to go to bed. Like doing that kind of stuff, I literally just kind of just go, I'm tired. I'm going to bed now. I don't want to do this anymore. And so I don't. Typically speaking, I don't. Because it's a headache and I don't want to deal with it. There's too much. It's too much of a waste of time. It's too much of a waste of time. It's not worth bringing yourself down emotionally for it. Because that's one thing I found, is I started feeling extremely hollow and empty and actually kind of sick trying to dive into this, dive into things like this and figure out, you know, what are the facts behind this, what is not, listening to the same heartbreak every fucking day. I actually started feeling hollow and sick. And that's why I stopped just, you know, listening to, listening to things like news every day.
Cheer 100 Ember, have you ever played or seen the end of Metal Gear Solid 2? It practically predicted the future. Blew my mind when I saw it again recently.
No, I've never had the chance to play Metal Gear Solid 2, but we did watch that video about the history of Metal Gear Solid or Metal Gear, and it talked about how Metal Gear Solid 2 basically was talking about basically the shadow government that was running everything. So yeah, I know of it, but I never played the game.
It already is a huge problem, and companies like Snopes do not help with that. Mark Zuckerberg made very particular statements about bias and loss of credibility, which we need to understand comes after a multi-year partnership directly with Snopes, and then after a partnership with the IFCN, which verified Snopes as a trusted signatory on 4 separate occasions, despite the abundantly obvious political contributions that people all over their company have made and continue to make. I find it completely impossible to sit here and do anything other than flat out agree with Zuckerberg. Bias is a problem. Snopes, in my opinion, is very clearly biased. And I don't really expect to find anything different if I switch over to another fact-checking organization, because the people that position themselves to do this for the past decade or two have repeatedly proven who they are. My final take on the situation is that fact-checking as an underlying premise is completely necessary and extremely valuable. Having the ability to look at something objectively and discern truth is a skill set that everyone should have. But in place of that, if they don't, because not everyone does or even cares to, some sort of unbiased third-party verification would be, in theory, amazing. Sadly, that's not what we have. Instead, we have a particular group of people who sought power for a particular purpose and continuously allow their own bias to infect the work that they do, which led to a complete erosion of trust in basically their entire institution, which is now seeing significant steps towards abolishment. In an article from Wired, we see, quote, one editor at a US-based fact-checking organization that works with Meta's, who was not authorized to speak on the record, told Wired that Meta's decision is going to eventually drain us out. And further down, stated by the director of the IFCN, which Facebook most recently worked with, quote, fact-checkers have not been biased in their work. That attack line comes from those who feel they should be able to exaggerate and lie without rebuttal or contradiction, end quote. But that statement from the director.
And you know what? If they had stopped by saying fact checkers have not been biased in their work and stopped there, that would have been a perfectly fine statement. But then this person had to continue on. The attack line comes from those who feel they should be able to exaggerate and lie without rebuttal or contradiction. I'm sorry, if you're part of an international fact-checking network, you shouldn't be saying this. You should simply, if you're speaking on behalf of your company, you should just say they have not been biased in their work. We stand by their fact-checking. End of statement. This should not. I'm trying to put how I like what I'm thinking here into words, and everything is getting all fucking scrambled in my brain right now. It feels like they're leaning in a certain way when they add this in. And yes, Lev, I did. I don't know, my brain's cooked after this video. I'm just gonna let it play out.
Is fact check false? Because even the IFCN, at least according to what I see, is failing objectively to properly vet their partners and contributing to an atmosphere where the value of fact-checking is now widely and rightly disputed. As it stands, the industry of fact-checking has sustained a tremendous blow to its reach. Meta Platforms includes Facebook, Instagram, and Threads, which is a clear shift in the atmosphere of who gets to speak and who gets to speak about what. I have no idea if the end result of this new direction is a good thing. No one really does yet, but it's certainly not unexpected. I mean, the announcement was unexpected, but the loss of faith in the institution of fact-checking is not unexpected at all, given how it's gone for the past few years. But yeah, it kind of feels natural considering how obviously the fact-checkers have abused their positions in so many different controversial moments. That's it. The video title says The Death of Fact-Checkers, which I believe may be true from an institutional perspective, and I'm not really sad about it. Community-sourced moderation is a really good thing to try, so let's try it. I hope it works. Of course, they do need to moderate illegal content and other severe infractions, obviously. Of course. But run-of-the-mill theories, speculation, and opinions, especially ones that diverge from the common collective, yeah, we don't need people like Snopes over here to fact-check that. If you want to support the channel, check out the links down below, a special VPN deal, locals and Patreon, channel memberships. I'm trying to branch away from ad revenue, so check those if you want to. And more, but I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching. Question everything, and have a nice night.
Well, we certainly went on a journey with that one. My suspicion is we are going to be getting into something of a Wild West when it comes to information on social media. We've already seen the move on X to community moderation. I have no idea how effective it is. I honestly have no idea. From what I've seen, from the few times that I've seen it, it seems like people with the community moderation seems like maybe it's working. But this does feel like we are getting into a Wild West kind of scenario in terms of anybody looking for facts, especially on particularly on social media, which was always dicey from the start. That was one of the big complaints, is that people were getting a lot of their facts or news from social media, and that was that was considered a big problem for a while, because social media was not exactly the bastion of being a great source of news. Now that we're basically relying upon the people for proper facts, I don't know how this is gonna go. I honestly don't. I think it's gonna get kind of nutty, but we'll just have to wait and see.